Hey, good evening, everybody. We're back for another edition of Meteorology Lab. We've been off for about a little over a week and a half, and just taking a break here over Christmas. And as you can see outside, I thought this was altocumulus, or I'm sorry, altostratus, when I first stepped outside. And then I started looking at the ceilometer readings, the METARs. These layers are only about 2,500 feet up. So what we're looking at here is actually stratocumulus and maybe some stratus up there, but definitely a low cloud layer out there. And we've been seeing this layer here for about the past 3 days, just solid overcast. Okay, here's the radar. As of this time, pretty quiet across the U.S. Probably a little bit of lake effect snow there in the Great Lakes, but most of the stratiform precip we have out there is in the northwest U.S. Let me check and make sure that our stream is up and running. Check on the audio here. All right. Looking good so far. Here's the pattern that we've got right now. This is the thickness and isobars. So we're in a very cold pattern here. This is associated with a lot of polar and Arctic air coming out of Canada. So the air mass path tends to be somewhat like that right there. And depending on the flow we have out in the Pacific, we can have the so-called Pineapple Express riding over the top of that, which means this area here can be a region of uplift. So right now we've got a little bit of uplift, not a whole lot. If we had a whole lot, obviously we would have snow and sleet and that kind of thing. But right now we're just limited to kind of a very weak flow up over the top of this dome here, and we'll check that out on the upper air charts here. The core of the polar air up there over northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba, and quite a big chunk of it coming into the Midwest and the northern U.S. there. Here's what temperatures have looked like this evening. These are the high temperatures as of a couple of hours ago. So down in Texas along the Gulf Coast, lots of 40s, a few 30s there. But as you go northward, we get into the single digits there in the Dakotas and into the Great Lakes, temperatures in the teens in that region. And where the core of the Arctic air mass is, minus 24 for high temperatures. Let me see if I can pull up the low temperatures. Just do a quick change here. Let's see here. QT-TA0. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull these up. QT-TA0. Okay, 01. That's probably it right there. Let's see if that comes up. So I'm trying to get the morning low temperature readings. Yeah, there we go. There's the minimum temperatures for this morning. And we're seeing 30s and 20s, actually pretty cold there in Mississippi there, 19 at Tupelo. And then we go up to the core of the polar air, minus 36 up in this region right here. Saskatoon, minus 30 to minus 31, and Regina, about minus 19 there. So quite a bit of cold air up in that region. And let me see here, Edmonton, looks like minus 10 in the city right there. Here's another way we can look at that polar air. We're pretty much inundated with that cold air across much of the eastern and central U.S. Where it goes out into the Gulf, we've got air mass modification taking place there. So we don't have a cold front in this region right here like it shows. The cold front is well to the south. But in the Rockies, yeah, we do have a front. Looks like it's going to be in this area right here. And we can see on either side of that boundary we've got convergent flow coming together. See here in Yellowstone, got southwest winds there converging with northeast flow in the plains of Montana right there. So in the Four Corners area and the Rockies, we've got some much warmer air. And let's see here, temperatures. Okay, these are potential temperatures. Let me bring that up. I've got a different chart for that. We'll see what the temperatures are looking like in the Rocky Mountain region. Might have about 23, and then we have 32 at Grand Junction, about 32 at Durango. So, yeah, that is pretty warm for this time of year. And then on the plains, minus 24 Celsius, that's going to be well below zero in that region. So let's trace the front on up into the northwestern U.S., and we'll go to the Pacific Northwest chart. And there we go right there. You can see the front kind of banked up. It's kind of shallow, and this follows the terrain very closely. So this is running from about Gillette through about, looks like around Bozeman up to around Great Falls. Yeah, that's the one right there. And inland, 20s and 30s in that region right there. And then on the other side there, minus 5 to minus 13. Another way we can look at that cold air is on soundings. So let me pull up a sounding. Okay, there we go. We're going to use UCAR. They've got the sounding page here at weather.rap.ucar.edu/upper air. And if we go into the Rockies, we'll try Spokane. There's what the sounding looks like there at Spokane. So a little bit of cold air near the surface. Above that, this is the warm air aloft. And we bring that down to the surface, and it's just above freezing in that region. Then we go on the other side at Glasgow, Montana, and look at that. Look how far over to the left the sounding is, way over here. So it's almost pretty close to the edge of the chart right there. And we can see that the depth of that air mass is about 10,000 feet deep, and the flow is out of the west-northwest. So it's very unlikely that that air is going to, actually we need to look below the inversion. But down in here, yeah, kind of a weak west-northwest flow, so that's not going to come over the passes into Wyoming and Idaho. It is fairly deep, though. That's some pretty good depth on that air. Let's go a little bit further south. Let's try Rapid City. A little bit more shallow in Rapid City, only about, looks like maybe about 7,000 to 8,000 feet deep. Or maybe a little bit shallower if we go by this right here. I think that that is probably the top of the frontal inversion, so we may only be talking about 4,000 feet thick there. And then in Omaha, a little bit further to the east, there's the cold air. Looks like the top of it may be right there, and possibly another top located right there. Okay, let's see. There was another chart I was going to show you. This is pretty interesting. This is the Polar Orbiter satellite data. And looks like maybe a little bit of terrain showing there on this chart in northern Alberta. If we bring up the provinces, yeah, this is Alberta. This is the northern part of Alberta, and this is British Columbia. And it looks like there's a slightly different color right here, and that may be indicating a little bit of low or mid cloud. So it's not really the texture there, but the actual coloring that looks different there. And you can see a little bit more of it right there. And then when you go further to the south, we pick up the high cirrostratus and altostratus layers from Calgary and Prince George southward. Okay, and then for the rest of the country, let's check out the satellite data. Okay, so there's the infrared imagery for this evening. And let me take a look at the chat here and see what we got going on this evening. Okay, Pete Frizella, new name there, asking about snowstorms down the road. We'll check that out a little bit later when we run the models. Alexi Pinkson Walsh saying hello in Electric Dog. We have Sue M. in Southern Indiana, missed the webcast. Ryan Toomey is joining us, and Adam Davis under a big pile of blankets tonight. Ryan Toomey is almost a full 2 weeks off, yeah. Everyone's freezing across the Midwest states there. Burl H., glad to see the webcast back. Kevin McKinney saying hello. Sue M. reporting -1 Fahrenheit there, warmed up to 23 there in Indiana. Fun with Tech also joining us, and Very Wise Wolfie asking about tornado season. And I don't get too much into the long-range stuff. I don't really feel it's very predictable. Maybe up to about a month ahead, I can get a general idea of what the patterns are. What I've been seeing in the model data, though, maybe I can bring this up real quick. And this is probably about as far as I go into severe weather forecasting, is I'll look at the temperature outlook. This is the long-range outlook here for January, February, and March, showing above average temperatures here. So that's telling me that possibly kind of a warm pattern there getting into the first part of spring. So it could be kind of dry there. The precip is the other half of that right there. Precip looking like this. Heavier precip up to the north and below average precip to the south. This tells me kind of a zonal pattern is going to be dominating. And beyond that, I'm really not too sure. So probably just, you can go directly with this and maybe be looking at dry conditions there in Texas and Oklahoma there to start the spring months. But as far as predicting actual tornado probability, that's very difficult to do there. David Moore saying, good evening. Hope we had a good Christmas. Yep, I had a good Christmas also. Spent the Christmas Day with my family there. Kathy Campbell-Wallace joining us also. Justin Pulliam, Electric Dog. David Moore seeing some buffering there. Mike R. reporting it's dry in Northern California. And Justin Pulliam seeing some buffering. Mr. Manlet joining us. Melody Loves Jesus seeing some buffering also. Well, let me see. Let me check the frame drops here. I had 964 frames dropped earlier. This is where I'm checking this out right here. I'm not seeing that go up right now, so there's no buffering taking place right at this minute. So we may have had just kind of a temporary glitch there earlier. Ryan Toomey is reporting severe weather season part 2 has been very quiet. Indeed, it has. Plenty of action earlier in the year. And just going quickly through the rest of the chat. A little discussion there about severe weather earlier this past year. Florida Keys cleaning up according to Ryan Toomey's there. And Derek Seymour joining us from chilly eastern North Carolina. And Dave Donut also. Okay, so we've got northwesterly flow in most of the U.S. right there. You can see that little bit of Pacific action coming into the northwestern states and then across the northern Rockies, but pretty quiet for most of the U.S. there. And even off in the Atlantic, looks like we got some cold air advection, air blowing from the interior off the coast. So a lot of unstable stratocumulus forming in this area right there. And you can see the cellular appearance to the clouds right there. And water vapor imagery showing what looks like maybe the return of the subtropical jet. So definitely some very moist conditions south of Lufkin, south of Waco, and south of Midland. To the north of that, some relatively dry air. And so if you were able to get above the clouds in Texas, you'd get above that low overcast. And then when you get on top of that, you would probably see a little bit of cirrus, or maybe some mid-cloud in that region right there, and very clear air in the northern part of Texas there. The satellite data, the infrared, showing probably scattered or broken clouds to the south of that line right there. So not completely saturated yet, but yeah, there is some patchy cirrus through that area. And then up to the north, pretty clear except for this band here, moving through Little Rock and Ardmore. Okay, the upper level pattern at this time looks fairly channeled. This is the heights and vorticity at 18,000 feet. And when we see this pattern here, we've got this very red cyclonic vorticity area right there across Canada, and then this anticyclonic clear area. This is telling us that we've got kind of a concentrated jet right in this area here. So very strong jet stream conditions across Montana, all the way down to the Dakotas and into the Midwest. And through that pattern, we've got a couple of waves. There's one right there moving through Iowa and Missouri right there. Little ridge further downstream around Ohio, and then a pretty flat flow across the high plains right there. So pretty quiet, maybe one little wave coming through this area right here, but not much else going on except for a little bit of ridging in Washington. And then for the short term, we can run that upper level pattern and show you what's going to happen. See, pretty flat pattern right there, not much going on. This little wave appears to be moving southeastward, and that'll hit the Great Lakes maybe sometime tomorrow afternoon. So maybe a chance of precip picking up in Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa there. And then we're back to kind of that channeled flow. Maybe a little slug of energy there in Michigan right there. That little ridge comes inland into Montana over the weekend. And then we see that ridge moving into the Dakotas on late Saturday. So that ridging will kind of moderate things today, or tomorrow. I'm sorry, that'll moderate things on Saturday across the northern plains there. And then we get looks like a little trough starting to move in. That'll come in behind that ridge, and looks like things will be picking up for Saturday night there as this next trough moves in. Okay, so that's the pattern right there. Let me just go ahead and go through the charts real quick. See if there's anything else to point out. I think that's probably all there is to show you, because there's not a whole lot going on today. Oh yeah, one thing I can't show you is the temperature anomaly. And as you can see, the North American continent is the cold spot in what looks like most of the world, except for maybe part of Australia and parts of the northern Atlantic here. So very cold conditions Temperatures running about 10 to 15 degrees Celsius below normal. Looks a little bit cold in Western Europe, UK, France, and Luxembourg, but most of the rest of the Asian continent and Europe looks very warm for this time of year. So this is kind of like shades of 2013, 2014 here. All right, so since we don't have a whole lot going on and this is our first day back from a break, I'm going to go ahead and maybe just take this into the forecast. So let's see what's going to happen over the next week or two. So here we can see a lot of high pressure covering the eastern and central U.S. And it looks like another batch of cold air coming from the north. You can see up to the top here, it looks like a 1048 millibar high right there. See the numbers, they're kind of increasing as you go north. So this is high pressure. This is another batch of cold air on its way southeast. Looks like maybe a little bit of a leading edge of one chunk of it right there, and then maybe another chunk of it right there. So let's see what happens. We'll run this forward. Looks like a little bit of that Pacific influence on the edge of that air mass, so snow in Montana and northern Wyoming. And there goes that little chunk of energy moving across Illinois tomorrow evening. And that'll quickly move to the east-southeast there. And here comes the big high-pressure area sinking southward. And then, looks like in Colorado, looks like a bit of a lee side low right there. So a little bit of cyclogenesis there, probably due to the strong zonal component. And so that's given a little bit of southerly flow in Texas. So that should get a little bit of a warming trend going. So here's the leading edge on tomorrow night. This is going to be about midnight tomorrow evening. This is the leading edge of this new front. And as we can see, that advances all the way down to the Red River and reaches Texas Saturday and Sunday. And it looks like the northern half of that advances through Indiana on Saturday. Moves very quickly eastward. And we find that all the way to Pennsylvania Saturday night right there. So pretty gusty winds and snow showers for Saturday evening there. So a big 1052 millibar high. This is very high pressure. That'll just be infiltrating most of the eastern and central U.S., kind of a reinforcing shot. And so we'll see kind of a cooling trend. And here you can see the thickness troughing from Illinois all the way down to Oklahoma there. That's indicating a very potent region of cold temperatures. So this is going to be moving southward on Monday and Tuesday and getting into Oklahoma and Texas around then. And let's see what happens after that. Looks like maybe another shot coming in for Wednesday. The old shot of cold air is located right there on Wednesday. Some of it extending into the southern U.S. So here's the next shot right here. And that moves southward and doesn't look quite as extreme as the last one. As you can see, temperatures are pressure is only about 1038 millibars. So it looks a little bit weaker. So it looks like things should be moderating as the week goes on. We find pressures falling across Canada there. So this points to a warming trend late next week there. So maybe one last bit of cold air coming down through the Midwest on Saturday, but conditions warming up there in the northern plains. And let's see what happens after that, getting into the 8th and 9th. Yep, looks like more polar air starts getting generated, but again, the pressures are only about 1034 millibars there. But there's a leading edge of that cold air. And to the north of that, looks like a little bit of wintry weather going, and a Pacific system coming across the Rockies. So a little bit of wintry weather possibilities around the 9th and 10th of January from the southern Rockies into probably the Mississippi River Valley and into the Appalachians there. And then we get to the end of the run, and looks pretty quiet there. I don't see much going on. Looks like maybe a little bit of a weak push of cold air coming southward there. You can see the 540 line coming into Texas. So probably a little bit of polar air production across the northern U.S. there. A little bit of snow showers in Oklahoma and Arkansas. But that's just kind of a preliminary look there. And that's how things look for January. So, okay, so we're getting things back on track, and hopefully I'll be able to keep things going here. Let me take a look at the chat. Mike R. mentioning very zonal flow in place there. Fred Reamer reporting -9 Fahrenheit. David Moore says GFS showing a strong nor'easter across New England next weekend. Oh yeah, we didn't look very far east there, so let me run this back. Yeah, we got a couple of storm systems going through the northeast. This one develops mostly offshore on the 31st. Then cold air infiltrates that area. The next shot develops, let's see here. Yeah, there it comes together in Florida on the 3rd. And then that links up with the Gulf Stream. And that's pretty far off to sea there. And then cold weather again on the East Coast, just kind of very stagnant. And then the next possibility coming up for the 10th there, along the edge of that cold air outbreak. And, you know, I would expect probably a lot of changes coming up over the next several days, because this is 300 hours out. And anything beyond 250, 260 hours out, that's getting into crystal ball territory. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on things for mid-January. And maybe we'll see more of this polar air continuing through the month. Ryan Toomey says, South Florida expecting to get hit next week with a strong cold front. Temperatures dropping down into the high 30s. USA mainland is an iceberg. Yeah, that's true. Mike R. says, thank you, Tim. Glad you're back. I appreciate it. Adam Davis says, bringing back unpleasant memories of 2014. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and get things back on track here and hopefully be back tomorrow night. And I don't even have my music queued up. Let me get that done here. And there we go. Oh, I got one of my sliders all the way up. Okay, a little bit rusty coming back from Christmas, but anyway, I guess we'll see you tomorrow night. Stay warm and take care. Bye-bye.